Yo, so today I'm going to be breaking down this rage melody I made and then throwing some drums on it.
Pineapple!
Alright, yeah, so this is a relatively, really simple melody, but I think I got the sound selection just right so everything meshes really well together and it all combines into something that sounds really cool. So for the first sound, I use this synth called Icicles from Synthetic's new Neon Pop serum bank. It's really good. You guys should definitely go check it out. But here's the MIDI for it. And overall, this isn't like the final MIDI, like what the chords actually look like. But I'm in C major and I just went and figured out these chords. And originally I was trying to make this like a dark, like whole lot of red style melody, I guess. So I did some things that I would do in those kind of melodies. So instead of like putting this at C where it's nice and even, it would sound happy, I moved it down one like I explained in my last like whole lot of red tutorial. So then once I figured out the chords, I went ahead and put them back like half a cell. So there's these little pauses, adds a little bit of spice to it, and gives your ears just a little bit of a break. And then I ended up filling those up with little transition notes that I just clicked around and find one that really like glided them together so it sounds really smooth and everything just sounds a lot better and it transitions nicely. So then I just went ahead and did that with all these and then spice it up a little bit on this last chord. So I duplicated the root note up 2 octaves, so it's up here, G6, and then I just have that at a little chop and then it goes down just so it kind of spices up the ending and it gives a little bit more variation because overall this is a super simple pattern and this little 5-bar loop repeats for the whole 16 bars. And then for the effects on that, I just threw gross beat on this trance gate. I'm pretty sure this is the one they used in Futsal Shuffle, but overall it sounds pretty cool. Then I cut all the lows and then kind of did a little bit extra because usually I'd cut it at 100 hertz to give room for the 808, but I went ahead and moved it up just so it's high end, so the other sounds have room to breathe in that low end space, and then put Pancake on it on the bigger preset LFO at 2 bars. So yeah, overall it's a pretty simple pattern, so here's what it sounds like. So yeah, just like a nice little like texture, makes it really bouncy with that gate, and overall just sounds really nice. All right, and then for the next sound, which is like the actual like heavy chord like bass of the melody, is a synth called Saw Smoker from the Rocket Powered Sound Bank. It's from the EDM section of like the bundle, and yeah, overall it sounds pretty nice. And then here's the MIDI for it. Overall pretty simple, just copies those same chords as you can see here. That's the same, that's the same, this is the same. And then I just went in and added top notes just to make it seem more full, and then also duplicated the bass notes down an octave just to make it feel really big and really fill up the entire melody. And then again, like the previous sound, I went ahead and added these transition notes just to spice it up a little bit and make it overall a little bit more smooth. Just like with these top notes, it really just adds a lot to the melody. And overall, to get them sounding right, you do just have to click around. I don't really have like a solid method for like, oh, just put it here or duplicate this up from the chord. I just kind of click around for most of these things till I find something I like. And then in the second half, I went ahead and chopped up all the chords, and this is literally the entire variation for the whole melody. Everything else is super repetitive and doesn't really change that much, so this is how it gets that variation. I went ahead and left some of them long because this would have been kind of weird if it chopped here. It would have been it wouldn't have been even, so it's still 4 chops here, and if I left this as like the size these are, it would have been 5, so it just makes it a little bit nicer and adds a variation with that long one. And then again, put another long one here to transition it. But yeah, overall same chords, just remove the transition notes, did Alt U to chop it up, and then brought everything back so there's a little bit of dead space in between them. Yeah, so to play this, I'm actually just going to play the final rendered out version because my computer is very crackly because I have like 7 things of Serum open. Here's what the final one sounds like. So yeah, that's it for the second melody. And now we can move on to the more like accent and lead sounds. So for the next sound, it's kind of like a pluck sort of thing, even though it says it's a synth. It's from the Void Serum Bank called Sugar, but the MIDI for it is super simple. It's the same one as the chords. In the first half, I left out the transition notes as well as the last half, and still keeping these chops for that variation. And then for the effects on this, something that is kind of cool is this Valhalla frequency echo. This is a really great plugin, and it's free, but you can get some weird stuff with the shift knob and feedback. And then I just went ahead and like made small alterations and made it sound really cool. Yeah, so that kind of like weird pitch down sound is actually from the frequency echo. So it does give it a really cool effect and spices it up just from being a straight up like pluck with delay. All right, yeah, and then the next sound is this Tall Sprite lead synth from Sunboy's Punk one-shot kit. Very good kit, but I went ahead and normalized it just for the mixing, but I turned it off so it would look nicer, I guess. But overall, another very simple pattern. It just copies all of the little accent transition notes from like the bass chord pattern, and all of like the quick changes are slide notes. So it just alters it a little bit and does add kind of a nice layer. And like I mentioned before, every other melody besides the chops at the end of those chords is super duper repetitive. So this is just a 4-bar pattern that repeats over the whole 16 bars. And here's what it sounds like. So yeah, very simple, but adds a nice layer. And then for the effects on that, I just have Valhalla Supermassive, another free plugin that I like to use a lot. Again, this warp knob can give you some really weird stuff, but I went ahead and used the dotted eighths orbits preset. But yeah, it just gives it that little slight echo, and it's not like overdoing it. So it's like overcomplicating it. It's just a nice little simple effect. All right, and then for the next sound, which is an effect sound. Again, I've used this in a video before and it just really spiced up the melody, but it's the siren effect from the Rocket Powered Sound bundle, again, the EDM section. But just plays one note, root note of the melody. It's in C major, so I just have it play C very high, and it's very spaced out, so it only plays once per 8 bars, so it doesn't overcrowd it. Because it is a very like full sound and it's kind of sounding complex. So here's what this sounds like. So just a nice little start to the melody, and overall just kind of spices it up in the arrangement because it doesn't come in that often. All right, and then in this melody, I actually use 2 different leads. So the first one is the abstract lead from, again, the Neon Pop sound kit. But here's the MIDI for it. And again, like I mentioned before, everything is super duper repetitive besides those chord chops, but it just plays these notes. And I figured this out on the MIDI, and I think a good trick for really any kind of melodies, I used to say this only for piano melodies, but the MIDI is so useful to make sure that you can get something catchy but not overcomplicate it. So this, like, you can hear it in your head, it sounds really nice, it's catchy, but again, not overcomplicated, so you can still layer more stuff on top of it. And yeah, the only variation is just this just gets pushed up a little bit for a little bit of a higher sound, but overall, still super duper simple. So here's what this sounds like. And then that just repeats over the next 3 more sections. All right, and then for the last melodic sound besides the bass, it's this Kinesis lead, again from the Neon Pop sound kit. Just been trying to get my way through the sounds because I just got it and I wanted to try it out. But overall, really great sounding lead. Here's the MIDI for it. Again, like I mentioned before, I played this out on the MIDI, just kind of listening to the chords and then just like messing around. And it's in C major, so it's super easy to figure things out because it's just all the white keys. So very simple. It just does this little pattern, repeats it. The whole rest of the thing, there's absolutely no variation, but still sounds pretty cool. So here's what it sounds like. Very simple, but it does add a nice little layer to the melody. And then for the effects on that, I just have this EQ that just kind of cuts the lows. All right, and then the final sound is this bass, again from the Neon Pop sound kit, but it's called the Death Eater bass. It is a very good bass, probably one of my new favorites, and it's a bass. It just copies the bass notes. There's really not much to explain, but it does sound pretty cool. So here's what it sounds like. So yeah, and then the effects on that, again, just another EQ to kind of dip out of the highs, because it is one of those basses where like you can hear it in here sometimes. So I just wanted to kind of not ruin the sound, still have the same feeling, but also kind of keep it more low end so it doesn't overcrowd the melody. For the arrangement, the thing that I did that I have never done before, it's taking out like the bass of the melody for this section. I just heard it in my head and it sounded really cool, and then I did it and it still sounded cool, so I left it in there. But this is just that pluck with the frequency echo and then the gated synth, so it's a lot more empty. So I think this will sound really cool when I put drums on it. And it just comes in back with the gate, goes back to steady, and then the gate, and then it re-loops. And then for the automation clips on this, I again had to do my favorite, like before the drums drop effect, which is the 1-beat gate and then basic 8. And then with the 1-beat gate, you go ahead and extend this last slice so you can hear the reverse. And then I went ahead and put a love filter on the master and did some automations. So it kind of sweeps in here at the beginning, just a nice little touch, and then does the same thing at the end. So it sounds all nice. For here, the last gate where it's reversed, it goes ahead and sweeps up, which just kind of spices it up even further from the gate and reverse. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the melody. So here's what it sounds like. So yeah, overall, I really like the way this melody turned out, even though I'm not good at rage melodies and I don't even make them. It's like the first one in probably like a month, but it sounds good, so figured make a video on it. But yeah, now we can get started on the drums. Alright, yeah, so that's going to be pretty much it for the video. think the drums turned out a little bit too complex. I'll probably dumb them down a little bit after this, just to make it a little bit more open, listenable, all that stuff. But yeah, have a great rest of your day. Here is the final beat.